Honestly, very underrated.
Yeah.
I'm getting down on a Blue Lagoon.
These are still like the UK ones, right? It's made them.
Yep.
Shipped in the UK.
Yep, made in the UK. Yeah, so it's we're redesigning the all black everything can and brand aside. So yesterday we just, I mean, a blessing. We consolidated all of our socials. So a few months ago, we had on the US side of the business, we had Abe Nation, which was our black labeled products. We had AN Performance, which we just launched a few months ago with the Vitamin Shop. And then later this year, we have a brand called AN Essentials coming out. So that being said, we just consolidated everything under one roof under an.sups. So it will have our AN Performance brand with Vitamin Shop. We'll have what's going to be called AN Black. So all black everything is the best-selling pre-workout in the UK, in Europe, Australia, the world. And that will sit under AN Black, at least in the States.
Yeah.
So it just makes more sense. AN Performance, AN Black, and then coming later this year, AN Essentials. And that's kind of like the full, systems go in 2025 for AN. Here in the States, we redid all the labels, the design concepts, new team, adding full-time video creative, marketing efforts, sales team is extremely robust. So from the top down, design, brand, messaging, family, all of that stuff, 2024, excuse me. Still can't believe it's 2025.
Yeah. I'm actually doing quite well on getting the dates right, on naming folders and writing checks. I haven't done the 24 yet, so it actually feels pretty good to not.
Well, cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers, Ed. Let's crack, please.
So
we all need it.
So yeah, we're redesigning the ABE can, all black everything can, and we actually have some really exciting flavor collaborations coming with that, which is
I saw them being teased.
Yeah. So we're locked and loaded from a licensing strategy standpoint. Now it's just execution, no pressure whatsoever. It's just my career on the line. So yeah, we're really, really pumped, but we're going, right?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, hell yeah.
We're doing it.
Great. Okay, good. I was like, I said all that stuff. I was like, I hope you were recording.
Yeah, no, I'm recording. I'm better than that.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I'm super excited to talk about the creatine peptide, especially with you, because I know when and we've been working together for years.
Mm-hmm.
When we started working together with AN Performance now, I was like, hey bro, like the creatine's great, but like there's a novelty ingredient in there that I think we need to really pound the pavement with and really tell the world what it is. And that's PeptiStrong from Nuritas, and the benefits behind it being it AI discovered is when I first heard that, I was like, when AI first started being a thing a few, like almost years ago now, and it's wild how it's like incorporated into our everyday lives now. We're kind of like, oh, okay, like, no, it's just AI did that. No, so that's at least a really cool part to me, but just the benefits alone, I take this every day, but I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty science. I'm going to let him do that. But
so for those that know, this beautiful face to my left, this is Nick. He's been on quite a few times. It's the homie. Official title with AN is marketing
director.
Just want to make sure I had it right. And sitting across from me is the very handsome as well, Neil Foster from Nuritas, right?
Yep.
And you're joining us all the way from?
Well, Nuritas is from Dublin, Ireland, but I'm from the UK. I'm from just to the west of London.
That's awesome. And how'd you get your start with Nuritas? And I kind of want to dive into like obviously what they do, who you are, and then I want to hear about this awesome AI discovered ingredient.
Yeah, look, I'll give you the 30-second, hopefully, backstory of me. So at a much younger age, I played rugby. That was my kind of sport love. It's not very big over here, but a big thing where I was. Getting ready to go to university, just wanted to play rugby, and I liked food, mainly eating it, but also for cooking it and everything else. So went to university, studied nutrition. Wasn't a thing at the time. You didn't have all the influences. Not everyone had an opinion on nutrition. But kind of went straight onto that, loved it, wasn't interested in dietetics and working in a hospital, not really a good enough person perhaps for that, but wanted to work in performance. So went straight into a sports nutrition company, so age of kind of 19, and have moved out and grown up and moved away from sports nutrition for a little while, but it's great with Nuritas to come back into that now as well. So Nuritas, I've been there for 9 years. So a lot of those early years, probably for the first 7 of those, we're building up the technology. We're actually doing all the research, discovery of the peptides that are now hitting the market. And it's got really exciting the last couple of years because we've actually, it's cool to say you use AI to discover something, but it doesn't actually matter. And it doesn't matter if you're the guy going to the gym using the product. You just care, does it work?
Yeah.
So what we've got to the stage now is, yeah, we found it with AI. Yes, we use loads of really groundbreaking technology, got loads of publications, recognition, VC funding to do all of that. But now it's actually being used and people are, I won't say writing letters, that doesn't happen anymore, but kind of say, well, this stuff's great. It really works. And that's the cool stuff.
So when you say you're doing the research, what I find interesting is like thinking of peptides, how more commonplace they are nowadays versus where they were 10 years ago. I don't think you heard a lot of people talking about peptides to that extent. So you're with them for 9 years. They're obviously building up credibility, getting all the technology ready to do the research. Was this like a foresight type of thing where they knew it was coming down the line?
Yeah, it's easy in hindsight to say, yeah, it was all brilliant planning, but there's a number of things that are happening, and I'm not the brains behind the business. That's our founder, Dr. Nora Caldi. But talk about AI. AI is not a new thing. Like the computational models and the algorithm, 60 years old. But the computing power is suddenly over the last decade getting to the point where you can actually use AI in an efficient and fast enough manner. Peptides. Not new. We've known about peptides when we've got peptides in supplements for quite a long while, and we've had peptides in drugs for quite a long while. But things like insulin, it's a hormone, it's quite a large peptide bordering on a protein, but it's effectively a peptide. So we've had these things for ages, but there's been all these challenges, which are all data-related challenges, too much information, not enough computing power, so just human intuition trying to find these things. And all these kind of trends supported by the technology have been moving alongside at the same speed, so that suddenly you've got this moment where you've got things like GLP-1 drugs, so semaglutide, etc. The P stands for peptide, right? So suddenly everyone's aware of peptides. We've got the computational power to start finding them in our food products and finding specific activities, and then the clinical research that needs to tick along in the background is just being completed and coming through. So it would be easy to say, yeah, we knew all this would happen 10 years ago, or Nora knew all this would happen 10 years ago, but there's a lot of kind of things all moving in the right direction and all kind of coming to the fore now. So I think the big thing for me, as someone who used to love sport, still trains, was that this is great hypothetically. It sounds really cool. Does it work? And that's what's really nice to see. And ultimately, our mission as a company is we want to improve the lives of billions of people. You can't do that with theoretical discoveries. They've got to actually make a difference. So PeptiStrong's the first. There'll be other ingredients coming through as well. So we need to keep them coming and
keep the research going.
Yeah.
Going. So now when you guys started obviously doing all the research, AI was incorporated the entire way through, or did that kind of start churning as the popularity of AI the last 4 to 5 years became?
No, we're digitally built. So AI from the very beginning. And like in a nutshell, what the technology does is we start with everything that's known out there in the world. So we say, when we started PeptiStrong, we wanted to increase muscle protein synthesis. We wanted to reduce muscle protein breakdown. And we also wanted to address the kind of chronic inflammation that comes through overtraining, comes from aging, just comes from poorer lifestyles that we all lead now compared to when we didn't sit in front of a desk all day long. So these 3 very specific molecular targets. So people have heard of things like mTOR. People are aware of FOXO. It's the genes that control muscle atrophy. And then we're targeting the NF-kappa beta inflammation pathway as well. And we build predictors for each of those. And we're learning from all the good science that's happened before, but then starting to test food-derived peptides that can be discovered in various different plant sources and seeing which ones of those. So building on that knowledge, improving and training our predictors so they get better and better and better, so that finally we can come up with the finished product, which is PeptiStrong. So PeptiStrong is from fava bean. They're called broad beans, got different names in different parts of the world, grown all over the world, eaten all over the world. But when you just eat the straight food material, you don't release those peptides to have that effect. And that's why we don't have, broad beans very eaten widely in the Middle East. It's not like we've got a bunch of really jacked populations all living in the Middle East because they eat loads of fava beans every day. It just doesn't happen.
Just ripped
Constantly.
Big Rami.
If you don't know what you're doing and you haven't got the technology and use the right enzymes to cut out those peptides, you don't get the benefits. So that's kind of where
You're saying isolating specific areas of it.
Yeah, literally cutting these small peptides out from these larger proteins. So when we absorb the proteins, we just break them down as per our digestion. But if you selectively break down those proteins so you have specific peptides available, and those peptides can survive gastrointestinal digestion, so we can eat them and they still work, that's where the magic happens. So that's what all the technology is around, is like learning what a peptide has to look like to do a certain job, making sure that that peptide is going to be is available through processing, through enzymes to hydrolyze the larger protein to get them out, and then that they'll survive digestion as well, so they'll work in the body. And ultimately, you do all that on a computer and in the lab to start with, but the bit where you kind of hold your breath across your fingers and toes is when you go into a clinical. Because it's great to say, yeah, we know that in a Petri dish, put it on muscle cells, it has this effect, and we can run it through a digestion model, we can show that it doesn't break down. But when people, gym users, eat the product, do we see outcomes? Do we see more muscle mass? Do we see better strength? Do we see better recovery? And that's where we got through 3 clinical trials now where we've seen those outputs. So that's like, you know what, this really makes a difference in the real world.
So now when you say the clinical trials, you had obviously the regular and then a placebo to kind of offset each other. And you did 3 trials, I assume, because 1, 2, and then the outlier?
Yeah, so 3 trials, all randomized, double-blinded, clinical trials. So, gold standard in terms of trials. The 3 trials are really building on each other. So we can refer back to kind of creatine plus peptide. There are a few ingredients that have really stood the test of time in sports nutrition. So we know protein's a food. It doesn't matter if it's in the supplement form or if it's on your plate as a steak or a chicken breast. Protein is a macronutrient. We need it. It's not going anywhere. Then you have really creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine. Like those are the ingredients that have been around for decades now. They have hundreds of clinical research on them. They work. There's no disagreement. There's no challenge question. The science is clear. They work consistently. The problem when you discover something completely new is you don't have 20, 30 years of other people doing the work and really proving it out. So you've got to do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, and you've got to prove everything. And you've also got to learn how your product's working and really prove that it's working the way that you think it would work. So our first study, which was done at Maastricht University, so it's in the Netherlands, it's Professor Luc van Loon. He is like the go-to person in terms of protein and muscle health and protein metabolism and digestion. So in that study, we paired PeptiStrong up against milk protein concentrate, because we use milk protein concentrate rather than whey, because in most of the products, specifically when you look at kind of adult aging nutrition, they effectively get skim milk powder in a little shot just to up protein and calorie intake. So it's the right control to use in that situation. And we put those subjects in a full leg cast. So we're immobilizing their leg. So we're forcing them to lose muscle. And then we take the cast off and we see how they're regaining muscle. And this is a study to look at muscle protein synthesis. Because what happens when you immobilize a muscle is muscle protein synthesis switches straight off. And then when you remobilize, it switches straight back on. You're always going to lose muscle because it's evolution. Muscle's expensive, energy-wise, to have. So there's nothing that's going to really prevent muscle loss. But what we want to know is how quickly does it come back? So in that first study, both groups are losing muscle. We take off the cast, we remobilize them, they're back walking, not doing anything intensive, kind of a recovery or a like physiotherapy type session, but just back moving. And what we saw, which was the key finding from the paper, is that the muscle protein synthesis rate, so it's called myofibrillar synthesis rate to give it its full name, you take it using muscle biopsies, so they stick a little tube in your leg and pull out a section of muscle.
Chunk.
Yeah, not very nice to look at. It's not fun. People don't generally come back for a second trial. But we saw 4 times the increase in muscle protein synthesis in that recovering leg in that group. So
And that was receiving a standard dosage?
So actually, that was a slightly higher dose because we balanced it against the milk protein concentrate that was being used. But the purpose of that study, and it's going back to that thing, if you have to prove everything out and kind of demonstrating it from square one, from having zero evidence to building that evidence set, what we wanted to show there is that the protein that has been broken down, it's not working as a protein. It's milk protein, that's a solid, high-quality dairy protein. It's got the branched-chain amino acids. It's got the leucine content. So if we're seeing anything different from PeptiStrong, that can only be a peptide-mediated effect. So the reason peptides are so cool is because they're signaling molecules. They don't get broken down and used as proteins, they're actually telling the muscle in this case to do something, telling the cell to do something. And what we see there's a very clear and pronounced upregulation of muscle protein synthesis. So 4x. It's not 5% more or 2% more. It's a massive 400% increase there. And that's what we saw. So this was like for us in that first study, the first thing we're doing is like, we did all this clever stuff in the lab. Does it really work? And you see something which is so kind of undeniable that it's like, yeah, we've got something here. Then what's going to come next? And that wasn't the only finding in the study. We also found, and this again really interesting because when you immobilize a muscle, if you get injured, if you're a sports player, it's kind of probably the more usual kind of circumstance we see this. You lose muscle quite rapidly if a muscle's immobilized. So if anyone yeah, exactly. They break a leg, break an arm, go into a cast, that comes out. They got one arm that's still muscular and then skinny arm. That muscle comes back relatively quickly. Depends on the population. If you've got a young male who's training with weights, high protein diet, testosterone filled, they're going to get that muscle back much quicker than a 70-year-old woman who's fallen and injured a hip or something like that. They're going to have a very tough time. So we know that muscle comes back, but actually muscle function comes back much slower, which is like really obvious. Anyone who's follows sports or played sports is you get back in the gym, your strength is back, but you don't make it back onto the field of play for a little while longer because there's other things in the muscle. It's not as strong. The balance isn't quite there. There are all these other kind of factors that are associated with actually getting back on the field of play. So as part of that study, the other part we did after this really short 2-week recovery period is we looked at leg press strength. So tested them before they went in the cast to get their baseline strength and then tested them, both groups, 2 weeks afterwards. And the PeptiStrong group was able to fully regain all their strength, so full regain of muscle function, even though neither group had regained all their muscle at this stage. They just function as recovering quicker, whereas the milk protein concentrate group, they were still quite a bit under their baseline performance. So this is ideal for us because it's great to say we got 4 times more muscle protein synthesis going on in the muscle. But the question is, what does that mean? Like, is that a benefit? Is that a functional output? And what that muscle strength output was just told us that, clearly something's happening and we can see that effect and we can measure that effect, in this case on a leg press.
So what I'm curious about is why you analyzed all these different nutrients and proteins and all these different things. Why land on plant-based versus maybe like an animal-based? Is there like a lacking there? Is the peptide not available in animal-based type peptides? I don't know. I'm new to this stuff, so I just want to know.
It's a good question, and the answer is actually like the answer is based on maths, which normally isn't an interesting one. So, I first of all maybe talk about proteins and other proteins that are out there and other peptides that are out there. So, in nutrition and protein supplements, protein hydrolysates are not new. So, a lot of people when they think of peptides, they might think of collagen peptides. Yeah. Or they might think of whey protein hydrolysate.
I think of like BPC 157.
Well, okay,
that's a different peptide. But that's what I start thinking when I start hearing peptides.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. So, like at one stage, you've got food protein supplements and collagen peptides, whey protein hydrolysate peptides. They are cut up really, really small. So they get them down to tripeptides, and it's all around absorption. They're good. They're good products. They serve a purpose. So if you've got an infant, someone immediately after exercise, elderly, they need things that get amino acids into the blood quicker. So they're going to make amino acids available and they're going to be easier if you have impaired digestion, which particularly when we age always happens. So good products, but those peptides are incredibly small. So effectively, it seems that small di and tripeptides potentially get across the gut a little bit quicker. So they get into the blood a little bit quicker. That's not a bad thing, but those aren't signaling molecules. So those aren't what we call bioactive peptides. Now, the other end of the spectrum you said there is like the BPCs, the semiglutides. So those are long, complex proteins, almost proteins, and it's difficult. You get different definitions of when does a peptide become a protein, and that gets very high science. But they're large and they're very precise, and they're so structurally sensitive to do their job. Often they're not nutritionally available because they will get broken down in the gastrointestinal system. So BPC is maybe one exception where some people will use it orally to heal the gut.
That or you spot inject, right?
But if you want it for a joint, you better put it somewhere close to the joint. So,
and I really don't want to cut you off because I know you're on a roll and you're spewing out awesomeness. So one of the things that I read recently that came up is a lot of cold medicines were recalled off the shelves because they were found ineffective because they don't make it past the stomach acid.
Yeah, exactly. It's there to protect us, right? So you can't just eat stuff and it all basically cause havoc in the body.
Yeah, get right through.
So it's a challenge, and from an evolutionary point of view, it's a bloody good job that happens. But yeah, in terms of active and making nutritional supplements, it's a barrier to a lot of
literal barrier to entry to get in.
Yeah, exactly that. So you've got those kind of complex hormonal stuff, and there's a whole series of those, and there's been a lot of kind of changes in legislation around, are those drugs, are they being provided off license and other things at the moment? But they work. They work because peptides are these really cool signaling molecules that they will instruct the body to do things, and the body, it's the language of the body. That's why peptides are so cool. It's because every living creature speaks the same language. So you can take this peptide, you put it in, it's like, I know what it's telling me, as opposed to small molecule drugs that tend to just stick in a spot, and they do a job, but there's often consequences of the job they do. So what we have done at Nuritas is we found that middle spot where we've got longer than these kind of collagen products. We've got things that are very specific still, but are able to withstand digestion, food derived, created in plants in this case, so that we can have them nutritionally, but they have that bioactive properties and effect. So trying to harness the best of both worlds in this middle ground. The reason it's plants and not dairy or human tissue-based or animal-based is because, and this is where I said it's a mass answer, if you take a milk, whey protein, like whey protein is one set of proteins within the mixture that is milk, and milk is one, I don't know what to call it, but product that comes from a cow. So if you think about the diversity of structures and amino acids and things that are in there, it's actually really, really limited. There's still a lot of data, and there's quite a few interesting peptides that have been discovered from milk and that have good effects, but it's very small. Collagen's even smaller. It's a lot of glycine in collagen, but there's not much diversity and interesting things you're going to find in there because it just doesn't have that things. There are some pretty cool peptides in like organ meats and testicles and placenta and stuff like that, and there's been a lot of science from there. We can learn from that science. But the plant universe of peptides is almost limitless, like trillions of peptides. So potentially like 60 billion peptides per plant source. So it just gives us this huge library to look within. So
is it because of their resilience to like survive in the wild, or is it
diversity? But all the systems are the same. We're all coded by DNA. So again, because it's that universal language. So actually, we just, by looking in plants, we're just looking in a much larger universe than looking within dairy or looking within pigs or whatever the thing might be. So it's a mass answer. I try to make it a bit more interesting.
That's crazy. So you guys get PeptiStrong. You have this peptide that you want to incorporate. So how do you land on it's going to be included with creatine? Does it need to be, or could it be a standalone on its own, or are there just more benefits when you combine the two into one product?
So and obviously that's kudos to Applied for spotting the opportunity with creatine. I'd probably step back and go to our second trial. So we did that first trial. It's like, this stuff works. So then we want to move into our dose level trials at the 2.4 grams, which is what's the full dose that's being used in each serving of the AN product. So the next study we wanted to do, we did a kind of muscle loss. We looked and we saw we have increased muscle protein synthesis. That's great. We now wanted to look at recovery and adaptation from exercise. So second trial we did, we are looking at a recovery event. So we basically bring group of, we call them weekend warriors. So like not elite professional athletes.
We know them.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Hey,
Exactly. Because if you bring in elite athletes, they are not human. They don't recover like normal humans. They can recover from anything. So to see any differences in that recovery is impossible. And if you do it with non-exercisers, they'd never recover. So again, you can't see differences. So you need the kind of people who, they train.
We need that hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of 3 times per week gym goer, mixture of exercises. So we get them in. We give them 14 days of PeptiStrong supplementation or placebo in this case. And we subject them to, they call it an exercise challenge or an exercise insult. It's an isokinetic leg extension machine. It's horrible. So effectively, you're fixed in. It's just doing like a quad extension.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the nature of the machine, you're kind of strapped in. There is no technique or getting the use of it. And the design of the protocol is just to cause as much muscle damage and therefore as much pain as possible. So it's absolutely horrific.
Who signed up for this trial?
Normally it's students. So make up what you will of that. So it really, really just beasts that leg. So that when they come out, they kind of hobble off the machine, and then they are hobbling for days after.
How long are they on the machine for?
It's a good. I don't know. Long enough. I mean, it is horrendous.
Sure.
I should know the answer to that.
No, it's okay. I was just curious because like, I don't know. Is it just one continuous horrible set?
Well, the funny thing is, if you're talking to
Dorian set,
the real sports nutrition, especially like the bodybuilding community, they're like, no one trains this hard. This is an extreme event, and they're like, I train that hard. Always the way.
Strap him in.
Yeah.
I train that hard.
It's like, no, you don't. Like these guys can't walk. No, I can't walk down the stairs.
Strap him in. Another one.
Feels good to me.
So we beast them on this machine, and then we get them back in 2 days later, and then the third day as well. So what we're looking, and we're testing their strength each time because we want to see, are they recovering? And that's not, you get some kind of feedback from them, but that's not always the most reliable. But you're looking at, are they getting their strength back? So this is how that conversation always comes up with the kind of particularly the bodybuilders, is I'm saying, but you don't train like this regularly. You go to the gym, you do a session. You might work to failure, but the aim is not to put yourself out for a week. You want to be back in the gym in 2 days or training your sport, whatever it is.
Past the delayed onset.
Exactly. So the quicker you recover, the more you do. Add that up over weeks and weeks and weeks. Great, you're getting stronger, no question of it. So anyway, so we got them back in the 2 days. Again, really clear kind of differences. So from that, we're seeing like 144% increase in strength over the period of time there. They're recovering better. At the 48 hours, they're fully recovered, and then some. They've actually got stronger at the third day, which is like a really interesting finding because it shouldn't really be happening. They shouldn't be getting stronger. And compared to placebo, I say that 144% above that. What was really cool in this study is that we're able to take a bunch of blood plasma from these people as well. So see what's happening in the muscle after they're doing the exercise insult and then through their recovery days as well. And we see that there's a bunch of different markers. So we call these myokines. So they're kind of cytokines are inflammatory molecules that get released due to certain kind of immune reasons. And myokines are muscle-released cytokines, and they're specific to exercise. So what we see there is on all the things that are involved with recovery, we see a peak, come back to baseline, which is exactly what you want. So kind of big reaction to the exercise, a big and amplified response, but then return to baseline and go there. And we also see that response kicking in quicker as well. So we looked at their blood prior to the exercise challenge, immediately after the exercise challenge, and then I think it's 2 hours, 4 hours, and the 48 and the 72. So we just see these graphs that have all got an amplified response compared to the placebo, and in a lot of cases that little bit sooner as well. And then a really interesting one there as well, which is something because it just always has kind of been in the scene and around the background of sports nutrition, is we also looked at the negative myokines that are happening. And one of the big ones that we always hear about is myostatin. So myostatin is something that inhibits muscle growth, and typically it increases as we age. We know exercise as a whole is good for it, but overtraining, over-exercising actually produces and increases myostatin. I guess that's some kind of evolutionary thing to show that if you do too much exercise, you don't suddenly blow up that you can't do anything.
I'm a habitual overtrainer. Yeah, 8 days straight, no rest day, and then I'm like, okay, and then
okay,
all right, I'm back.
So what we saw is we effect for that specific overtraining event, that leg extension, we pretty much knocked out that overtraining effect cool. From the myostatin. So we saw a tiny little speed bump, but compared with the placebo group, which just had this big peak of myostatin that came on. So we just turned that big peak into a speed bump and then got it down to baseline as well.
Pretty sick.
So as a nutritional ingredient, like honestly, the pharma companies, like everyone, there was this big, it was about 10 years ago now, probably this big furore about, myostatin doping is going to be the the next frontier in sports performance and pegs.
To mitigate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're going to have these super athletes, and there was these pictures of these Swiss cows that don't have any myostatin, and they're just
The Belgian Blue Bulls?
Yeah, and
Yeah, you ever seen a Belgian Blue Bull?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want one just to hang out in my
Call me
front
that in
lawn.
college.
these
yeah.
guys, and they did like they knocked out the gene in mice, and there was these mutant like mice who were
Crazy.
ripped. So it's just been this kind of holy grail, and like we didn't see that in our
Damn. Damn. I was about to grab that whole bag.
but like to see a nutritional ingredient which is able to do that, which like pharma have been looking for solutions in that area for decades now. So a really nice piece from that.
How are you administering the actual PepiStrong? How are you administering it during the trials? Is it just by itself? Is it?
Yeah, no. So in all our studies, again, back to that first point of, we have to prove we work first and foremost, and we don't have 20, 30 years of other people doing studies here to boost it. So we've been really simple on our studies. We've just put PeptiStrong in on its own, not with additional protein supplementation. In fact, most of the time we're telling our subjects not to use other supplements because we want to get a really clean, clear result that it's PeptiStrong delivered.
And it's just powdered?
And first we put it in as powder, so it just as a drink, add a bit of flavoring in there just to make it palatable and drunk. So going through the gastrointestinal system just as any other product would be, just as AN creatine plus peptide is. Second study, because we wanted to use a placebo, we encapsulated. So it's 2.4 gram dose. Just popped it in capsules. The capsules weren't special. They weren't, helping with digestion or protecting the ingredient. It just means that the subject, person in the study, can't tell if they're taking PeptiStrong or they're taking something different.
Yeah.
So it's just to camouflage everything.
Cool.
Now, is there a difference in rate of absorption and bioavailability versus powder and capsule, or is it equally the same?
No difference, because the capsules we use are just HPMC capsules. These are the standard kind of veggie caps that most people get stuff in. They dissolve straight away in the sun. They offer no protection whatsoever.
That's a question that I get frequently when I talk about the product as well. Oh, well, we see it PepiStrong alone with whatever other product in a capsule, and that absorbs better, and that is completely, utterly false. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes no difference. That's the cool bit of what the science we've done before to ensure that we're creating ingredients where we know that they don't have to. In the future, we might find something that's really cool and works in another area. Maybe that's going to be in liver health, or it could be in anything. And it's actually, this is a really cool peptide, but it doesn't withstand digestion. And then we're going to need to get smart about how we deliver that. But the case with PeptiStrong, we don't have that issue. Yeah.
And then that's why, that's why when we were making this, and kudos to Ben, Gareth, and Darren, when they were creating creatine peptide, it's like, all right, so everyone has a creatine. It's the most trusted ingredient, quite literally, of all time, the most tested ingredient of all time. How do we take this? How do we make it unique? And how do we really increase output performance? How do we give people the most bang for their buck? And how do we, again, just make it different? Everyone's making the same thing. How do we market this the correct way? So let's throw a full dose of creatine, 5 grams straight monohydrate, not HCl, not all of these other versions, and pair it with PeptiStrong, but not like a gram or two, the full 2.4 gram dose. So all these great benefits that he's talking about, and then pairing it with 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, whether it be added muscle size, endurance, strength, speed, performance, and then all these other added benefits from PeptiStrong. Darren calls it, he's like, oh, it's your daily anabolic drink. But the cool thing about it, though, is it's so convenient. It's a scoop. Whether it's with your protein, I drink it intra-workout. I like it with our hydration powder. It makes everything taste great. Just one scoop a day, and super cost-effective, too. It's like less than $1 a serving. So,
well, you did ask the question. And so, yeah, we gave PeptiStrong straight as is. In the second trial, it was just in the mornings, just with breakfast, or basically it doesn't matter. You put it early, first thing in the morning, because you want adherence. And if you tell people to take it in a funky way, they forget, basically, and then you can affect your results. And that's what I love, because it's the same with creatine, is they don't need to have specific use times. So I typically, personally, I take PeptiStrong after exercise, but it's not for any reason. It just fits in with my side. It's the same with creatine, though. Creatine, we know, builds up in the system, so it doesn't matter what time you use creatine. You're going to get the benefits once you've kind of allowed the build up there. You'd ask the question, like, why the combination and why it's so good. Creatine, tried, tested. We know what it does. We know it works. And I love the way it works. I always picture this in my mind. I'm not sure it's going to come across to the listener, but I think of like a figure of 8 with me or the trainer in the middle of that figure of 8. And the creatine is the top loop of that. So we know what creatine does. You put phosphate donor that helps reconvert or convert ADP into ATP energy, and that ATP energy is what we're going to use for sprinting, punching, jumping, lifting weights, or whatever the kind of sport we're doing. So you've got that top loop being fulfilled by creatine. Creatine helps you train harder. It does have some impact in terms of muscle growth, but mainly it's just by causing a bigger stimulus. So what PeptiStrong does is the bottom circle of that figure of 8. So you've got a kind of a virtuous loop going on at the top with train more, train harder. Yeah, you've got the extra benefit, the extra water into the muscle and the extra workload and lean mass that brings as well. And then we talked about the first 2 studies on PeptiStrong. What you've got is increased muscle protein synthesis post that training event. So you've trained harder, but you want your body to be able to respond to that. You've got improved recovery, so you can get back into the gym and train again or have as good or a better training session than you would have done otherwise post that training event. And then the third advantage that we see with PeptiStrong from our third study, which was a longer study, which was looking at strength, and we did in men and women. So it's really important. Again, not enough science is done with female subjects. It's just going to stick to men. Is that we see this big increase in strength endurance. So over an 8-week period, we saw that the PeptiStrong group, as opposed to placebo group, was able to do double the amount of additional repetitions. So they got stronger over the study, but the PeptiStrong users were able to do double the number of reps. Plus, they actually got stronger as well versus placebo. So an extra 17% strength increase across the course of that study. So now you've got this, again, virtuous kind of figure of 8 loop going on. You're training harder. You've got more energy to train. You're pushing more weight. You've got increased muscle protein synthesis happening from that. You're recovering better from that exercise. And you're able to have more muscular endurance and more stamina to do more coming back in. And it's just self-fulfilling. So I just think it's a really nice, simple combination, but the simplicity of it isn't a bad thing. It's just obvious. And before, I use creatine. Actually, I didn't put them together, which kind of more for me, but in the different stages of my training, I'm going to use creatine, and I use PeptiStrong continually throughout the year, as you would expect someone from Nuritas to do anyhow. But they're just going to work really well together, and just putting it in a single scoop and making it accessible and affordable is then just the extra part that needs to happen.
The icing on the cake.
Yep.
Is there a reason that we did monohydrate instead of the other creatines?
Just because it's monohydrate. It's purposeful. It's the one that's tried and true. The most studies, most white paper, most proven results ever in supplements period history. So that was really the goal there, and it's just really old school meets new school, right? Everyone's used creatine. Everyone uses creatine, whether it be for in the gym. There's even cognitive benefits now. And
Some
then
people saying push to 10 a day.
Yeah, I saw that study. But
10 grams a day instead of the 5.
And then it's just, again, pairing those 2 ingredients. It was really a no-brainer. Like he said, it's like it's only 2 ingredients. It's pretty simple. You wouldn't think it, but the simplicity is really the just greatness within the product.
That's probably something that you guys could both comment on in the supplement industry as well. It's just like over complex things that don't need to be. Just making it like a laundry list of ingredients, when how many of those ingredients on a supplement label are actually going to help you out versus you have a product right here that's going to be tried and true, proven. Yeah. Not only have the double-blind placebo and gold standard testing in the back end, but actually have the data to prove it versus just like, well, I see what I'm buying has all of this. Does any of that actually make a difference?
Yeah, in our space,
sometimes keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, in our space, it gets really crowded. Not even like with bad apples, but sometimes.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's maliciously done. I just think sometimes the companies may think that somebody will look at that and think, "Wow, I'm getting so much for the dollar."
Yeah, more is not always necessarily better. And there was a few years ago, you saw like this like new age of just people doing these fully loaded pre-workouts of just like kitchen sink approach, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but after a while it gets redundant, and like what really makes you different and what ingredients are you using, why are you using it? Again, more isn't always better. Yeah. So like you said, sometimes keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes it's a 2 ingredient product that's like, holy shit, I didn't think of that. But again, it's what works, what do we know works, and is it validated? Is there studies behind it? Can we prove it? Is it cost effective? And is it innovative? And that's really why when we were bringing creatine and PepiStrong together, it's like it's the agreed approach of keeping innovation at the head of our thought process when creating these things, but also what's really going to create as much output and increased performance as possible. And that's what AIM Performance is, just as a brand. That's just really who we are. And for that forever athlete, right? Just creating more output and increasing performance at every single level, whether it's me, like the weekend warrior, you jiu-jitsu, or this behemoth of a man sitting right in front of us cranking weights. So it's
Bad day to be a weight with my man.
I know.
Bad day to be a weight.
Bad day to be a weight. But that's really the approach. And that's why I think the marriage of these two, and all the amazing science that he was talking about, and it just makes too much sense. But
yeah,
you know.
So now, where do you see? Obviously, you said there's so much more that you guys can do with all the synthesizing other types of peptides. You have this laundry list, Rolodex of different types of elements and ways that you could do different things. So where do you see this as the jumping off point to now start to really hammer into the fitness world?
Yeah, so it's interesting with PeptiStrong, actually. I mean, I love being back in the sports nutrition space, but actually we talked about our vision, or I talked about our vision right at the start, is to impact billions of lives. So I actually see one of the biggest opportunities for PeptiStrong, and the biggest area of need is actually in frailty and the healthy aging market. So you have the kind of the healthy aging, which is probably people my age who just want to age better. But then you have the medical nutrition kind of end use, where people are losing a ton of muscle. They can't get up. They lose all their independence and everything else. So we've got to keep building on the science. So we're not kind of 3 studies and done with PeptiStrong. It's just the start, and we've got to keep on progressing that. Of course, we've got some other ingredients coming through, but I just want to kind of answer your earlier question around overcomplicating and things like that.
Please.
I think I'm not going to say anything bad about anyone who is bringing ingredients or finished products to market who's studying them and bringing science to support what they say, because I think that's great, and there's a lot of good companies doing those things. But a lot of those studies, as we have done, they're all in isolation. So what I think starts to get really interesting, here we're taking 2 very well-studied now, clever ingredients that I can talk through that story of why they work together, rather than so it's a very easy mechanistic approach to why they are natural bedfellows. Whereas sometimes some products are a little bit of, well, we'll throw this in, we'll throw in that, we'll throw this in, because they kind of all got stuff that consumers want, but they haven't thought of the system, which is the human or the biology that they're going into.
The big picture.
So I think there we can start to look into how things interact, and that's where things get really, really cool. And ultimately, you deliver better to the customer, and then the customer gets results, and that's all they care about and want. So they need to see results. Other areas for us, I think adjacent to kind of classic sports or active nutrition. So we're really interested in sleep, and we've got some products underway in that area. So big opportunity there. And very interested in kind of glucose management and that GLP weight management area as well. So, the fact that we're seeing, it was just a huge shift really in I think I saw some data the other day, which is it's the first time in history that the obesity figures in the US have actually taken a downward turn, because it has just been a constant increase, and I'm not picking on the US. That's
pick on us. We need it.
Yeah, it's all around the world, but it's the first time that that's actually taken a dip, and there's less obese people as opposed to more year on year. So I think that's a really seismic change. But it's interesting because you've got now a lot of people using strong drugs
Ozempic and all those different things,
and using them potentially could be for life. So what's going to happen?
Which I find interesting on the terms of like you're using that to lose the weight, but then you're also diminishing muscle.
Yeah. Oh well.
So where does it come into like picture for you to use something like PeptiStrong?
Yeah. And I think that the industry is acknowledging that exactly. So actually, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just kind of thinking more around we need solutions that aren't just Ozempic and Wegovy.
Oh well, I agree too. I'm a firm believer that you need to have like actual rigid diet, practicing what you put in your mouth, and obviously the output in the gym and physical activity, taking walks. It's a gradual step for somebody that thinks they need an Ozempic. You have to gradually get them into a lifestyle like that. It's not just like, well, go to jujitsu and roll around and eat chicken and rice for the rest of for the rest of the week and salads and this. You have to kind of just baby step them in. The unfortunate truth, I had this conversation with some family members recently, is that a lot of doctors will just push this drug because And once again, it's like, no offense to them. They're told that it's going to help this person lose weight. It's kind of just like, I don't have to deal with it anymore. Like, it will have effect. But now, what are the back end effects of this? Because there's always like yin and yang. So what are the back end effects of this drug where you're going to lose muscle mass or bone density issues when you have old people, a lot of people that are in their, not later stages, but, 40s, 50s, and now they're going to have bone density issues starting to occur naturally, but now you're taking something that's going to rapid fire.
I think one of the really, and 100% on all of that, one of the really, and this is why for me, PeptiStrong is that opportunity in the older, frailer population. We know that the best thing you can do to live longer, so years to your life, is exercise. Having more muscle is pretty closely linked, and we see a good increase in your lifespan. Grip strength, all those things which are effectively a measure. But muscle function alone. So even if you don't have muscle, just strength, I think it's 17%. You get a 17% increase in life expectancy associated with being stronger. So the question is what you were talking about here is, the drugs, the Ozempics, they can help you because it's got to be incredibly intimidating or even an impossible task to get into exercise when you're at that stage. But it's like, what's going to happen and how do you get this as a helping hand to make lifestyle improvements? But the way you see a lot of use at the moment with Wegovy, Ozempic, etc., is that people go from a overeating, poor nutritional density environment, they take the drugs, they eat the same food, but they eat considerably less of it. And now you actually, in a Western world that didn't have this, you now got malnutrition going on. And the muscle loss and everything else is malnutrition related because not hungry, consuming far less calories, but they're still crappy calories. So I think it's a huge opportunity. It's not easy because drugs are expensive. They work in terms of scale weight. So there's a massive education piece. But for sure, having anything that can get you in the gym, can help you recover better, supports and protects your muscle mass is going to be absolutely key. And I'm sure there's a lot of people using the drugs and making some other positive changes, but there's definitely a lot of people who, take the drugs, losing the weight. And then we're already seeing that once you stop use, that weight comes back on. And then it just gets into that typical kind of yo-yo diet of a lower muscle mass, lower resting metabolic rate, and the weight comes back and it comes on more so. But now instead of being like an up and down over, like I'm going on a 6-week diet for a bikini or something, it's now happening over years. And we're just going to see this potentially much more dangerous kind of yo-yo diet effect over a much longer period.
Seesaw scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. I like how you said just general scale weight though, because it's everything, not just fat.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything starts to come down on that. But all right, so we have PeptiStrong in creatine with AN Performance. I want to let you do the spiel about like it's available vitamin shop in the States, overseas. I assume it's available overseas as well. You got to give me an idea. I don't know.
Yeah, no. So creatine and peptide available on ansubs.com under our AN Performance tab with all the new AN Performance products. If you want to walk into your local vitamin shop nationwide here in the States, it's available fully in stock. And then within, I want to say in January this month, it'll be available in the UK as well.
Cool. Yeah, I don't want to overspeak.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah,
I listen to his face. He's like looking at me like this. I'm like, I don't know when it releases.
So this is also too from a branding standpoint. This is a really big moment for us because this is one of the first products. I think I don't quote me, and hopefully I'm not wrong. But that the UK team is bringing from the US. So this is one of the first products really ever that they're taking that we did over here, and they're like, oh, that's sick. Let's bring it over here. And again, I think it's just a testament to the science, validity, and what the product itself stands for. So this is truly a global effort, and it's really just fueling moments worldwide. So that's really our goal. And
sick.
That's what we're all about.
Anything else, Neil, that we didn't cover?
No, I think I talked a lot.
No, you did. You hit it right out of the park.
Honestly,
you crushed it, dude.
Thank
You're
God,
awesome.
Because
no, you crushed it.
it.
Exactly what I was envisioning. The sit down to look like with the actual science backing, the base of what you guys got into and stuff like that. It's awesome. The AI stuff is super interesting though. To it's just like so early on, even though like you said, the technology is over 50 years old now. it's so interesting to see where it's going to go in terms of that field of being able to like find and discover things versus me just like typing into chat GPT, how should I respond to my girl?
That's what I do every day.
That's what I do now. No.
Every day.
I won't name the investor,
kidding,
but we've had some really cool investors in Nuritas and continue to have so. But in the very early days, there was one who's very big in the kind of social media and tech space, and their soundbite as to why they're so interested in Nuritas was it's using AI for good.
Yeah.
Because previously, okay, now it's got a bit more interesting with Chat GPT, but AI used to tell you what to watch on Netflix and help you buy a pizza.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, it can do a lot of good, and hopefully, we're one of the forces for good.
That's awesome. Well, Neil, I really appreciate your time coming down, chopping it up with us. Nuritas, you said it's Irish.
Irish, yep.
Irish company. You're located in the UK, though.
Yep.
How's the UK been? How's the weather out there?
Not quite as cold as Long Island.
Okay.
But close.
Okay.
Yep.
Not rainy, though.
For once, because it's too cold.
That's
Small grace. Yeah.
That's awesome. Listen, Neil, I appreciate you. Nick, I appreciate you. For everybody that's interested in the AN line, Nick told you where to get it. Vitamin Shop around the States and coming soon overseas back in the UK and wherever else AN is available.
Yep.
But I appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. But for now, peace.
Thanks.
What's going on, guys? I hope you enjoyed the last episode of Rizzology with Neil from Nuritas and the most handsome Nick Karalakis with AN Performance. This episode is sponsored by AN Performance. If you liked any of the stuff that we were talking about, the creatine plus peptide formula that we went super in depth about, and you want to give it a try, it's available nationwide in the United States at Vitamin Shop, or you can get it on ansups.com. Code RIZZLES for 20% off. Check it out and see those gains.